Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a really unique take on modern power.
Yeah, it's based on this book, Hypnocracy, Trump, Musk, and the New Architecture of Reality.
By Jianwei Xun, translated by Andrea Colamedici, and it's not your standard digital age analysis, is it?
No, not at all. The translator, Cole Medici, felt it was like a rare key, something that really unlocks how the present works.
Right, not just the snapshot, but the inner mechanisms.
Exactly.
And this author, young philosopher, but already being compared to some heavy hitters like Baudrillard or Byung-Chul Han.
Yeah, Cole Medici calls the book an unprecedented map of how power operates now. It goes way beyond just, who controls data or surveillance.
It's more about the perception of reality itself.
That's the core idea. Sun argues reality has become almost fluid, gaseous, the term used.
Gaseous, okay.
Yeah, so it's less about true versus false anymore.
And more about
More about navigating this landscape where loads of incompatible realities just coexist.
wow, okay. And to help us with that navigation, Zuman introduces some new concepts.
Really original ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Things like algorithmic edging, perceptive sovereignty, dark resistance.
Algorithmic edging. That sounds intriguing. What's the gist?
It's the idea that platforms are basically designed to keep you perpetually wanting more. Engaged, but never quite satisfied, kind of on the edge.
Okay, I can see that. And these aren't just buzzwords.
No, they're presented as actual tools. Tools for understanding this blurry reality we're all in.
Colamedici also mentions it resonates particularly in Italy.
Yeah, apparently the Italian culture has a history of dealing with multiple truths, complex narratives. It fits. Lucian even cites the Italian collective Luther Blisset.
Ah, Luther Blisset as an early example of resistance.
Exactly, which we get into later.
So no easy answers in this book, then.
Definitely not. The goal isn't a simple fix. It's about developing what Sun calls reality literacy.
Reality literacy, like media literacy, but for reality itself.
Kinda, yeah. The ability to recognize these different reality systems, move between them consciously, and crucially, hold on to your own perceptive autonomy.
Understanding the rules of the game, essentially.
That's a good way to put it.
So for today's deep dive, we'll follow the book's structure.
Yeah. First, we'll look at Zun's analysis of Homo social, the human within this new reality.
Okay.
And then we'll explore the map he offers for, navigating or maybe even subverting it.
All right, let's dive right into the core concept then. Hypnocracy. What does Zun actually mean by that? A regime operating on consciousness.
Right. So Zun's argument is that hypnocracy isn't about physical control or, censoring thoughts in the old-fashioned way.
It's more subtle.
Much more subtle. It works by inducing this kind of permanent altered state. Think of it like a waking dream or a functional trance we're constantly in.
A functional trance. Okay.
Yeah.
So reality gets replaced.
Replaced, or maybe better, continuously shaped by suggestion. Our attention is constantly being modulated, steered. Our emotions are even induced and manipulated, often without us clocking it.
That sounds incredibly pervasive. How does that constant suggestion actually manifest in daily life?
Well, think about the sheer repetition. Certain images, certain narratives just hammered home constantly.
Right.
And reality sort of fractures into these different subtly guided dreams. Critical thought isn't attacked head on. It's just gently lulled, silenced almost.
And our perception gets reshaped bit by bit.
Exactly. And screens are obviously central here. They're the portals for this hypnotic flow.
It's full of information, yeah?
And it's often this mix of shock and the numbness, right? Keeps us off balance, more susceptible.
That definitely resonates, that feeling of being bombarded, but also kind of numb.
That's it.
Yeah.
Our experience gets fragmented, just one stimulus after another. It's overwhelming.
And that exhaustion makes us more suggestible.
Precisely. Our cognitive defenses get worn down. So shared reality kind of breaks down into these thousands of mini-realities. No unifying story.
Just competing stories bouncing off each other.
Colliding, reflecting, yeah. Blurring the lines between what's real and what's simulation even further. Power, in this view, has changed. It's not solid anymore.
It's gaseous.
Gaseous, yeah. Invisible, but everywhere. Every image, every word, every bit of data becomes a tiny, subtle weapon in this environment.
So we're in this state of permanent hypnosis, but we're still functioning, not completely out of it.
Exactly. Awareness is dulled, critical thinking weakened, but not gone entirely. And this is the context where Sun brings in Trump and Musk.
Ah, right. He calls them emblematic figures, priests of this era.
Priests, yeah. Representing opposing forces almost, but complementary ones. both playing key roles in this battle for reality perception.
Priests is a strong word. What roles does he see them playing specifically?
Well, Sun suggests Trump is a master of, let's say, emptying language.
Emptying language.
Yeah, the constant repetition of slogans, catchphrases,
Mm-hmm.
it drains words of their original meaning.
Mhm.
They become these hollow symbols, but still hypnotically powerful, bypassing reason, hitting emotions directly.
Okay. And Musk.
Musk operates more through utopian promises, tech-driven futures, always just around the corner.
Right. The big, bold visions.
Exactly. He floods our imagination with these futures that might never fully happen, but they keep our minds locked in this state of anticipation. Obsessive anticipation, almost. A tech trance.
So together, they modulate our desires, colonize our unconscious.
That's the idea. They rewrite what we think is possible, what we should want.
And they both seem incredibly good at creating a crisis and then positioning themselves as the only solution.
And what's really fascinating, and maybe a bit scary, is how contradictions don't seem to hurt them.
If anything, they seem to make them stronger.
Osman argues they do, yeah. Precisely because of the depth of this collective hypnosis. Trump can be the anti-establishment outsider while being the establishment. Musk champions progress but worries about AI dangers, denounces billionaires while becoming one.
And the contradictions just don't register, or people don't care.
It seems that way.
Right.
And Sun suggests that any criticism can even be twisted by followers. It becomes proof of authenticity or attacks from the enemy.
Like a classic hypnotic technique. Resisting the suggestion makes you sink deeper.
That's the analogy. Even critics get trapped, forced to react on their terms, which just reinforces the whole hypnotic field they're trying to fight.
So hypnocracy doesn't need everyone hypnotized, just a critical mass.
Exactly. Enough to shift the whole social reality for everyone else.
And the tools for this mass hypnosis are digital capitalism, algorithms.
Those are the mass hypnotic technologies of our time, yes. The attention economy isn't just business. It's a system for inducing collective trance on a massive scale.
So social media isn't selling ads, primarily.
Sun would say they're selling altered states of consciousness. Deep suggestion, delivered right to your feed. The real product being traded is the induced dream, the reality bubble you scroll through.
And the recommendation algorithms, they're basically automated hypnotists.
Essentially, yes. Every scroll, every notification, every tailored piece of content is like a personalized hypnotic session, designed to keep you entranced, engaged, consuming.
So digital capital isn't just about money anymore.
It's also accumulating altered states of consciousness. Even things like crypto, NFTs, the metaverse, they can all be seen as forms of collective trance or hypnotic environments.
What about the platform economy? Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, are they part of this too?
Oh, absolutely, part of the trance economy. Uber sells the dream of being your own boss, right? Airbnb sells lifestyle fantasies. Amazon delivers constant dopamine hits via shopping.
And AI is just perfecting these techniques.
Making them more efficient, more personalized. And the gig economy itself, often framed as freedom, but Sun might see it as inducing a permanent working trance, self-exploitation feeling like autonomy.
Even remote working blurs those lines further.
Exactly. Our whole lives become potential work sites, potential zones for suggestion,
So fundamentally, the algorithmic society is a hypnotic society.
where controlling states of consciousness becomes more valuable than controlling factories, owning minds over owning means of production. That's hypnocracy as the evolved form of digital capitalism.
Which means resistance has to go deeper than just critiquing capitalism or tech bias.
Much deeper. It has to start by understanding the hypnotic nature of it all, cultivating presence, moments of awareness to break the flow.
But Sun isn't saying a full awakening is possible, or even the goal.
Maybe not. He talks more about aiming for lucidity within the trance, a kind of controlled madness almost, that reality literacy navigating these altered states consciously.
So these digital platforms become these complex power laboratories.
Constantly experimenting, remodeling our perception. Algorithms are the invisible grids ordering the chaos, often in ways we don't see.
And we're the guinea pigs in this global hypnotic experiment.
Unwitting participants, yeah.
And if we try to resist within those systems,
It often just gets absorbed.
well,
Hypnocracy is incredibly adaptive. Dissent becomes more content, more engagement. Refusal can even be framed as a type of consent.
you can't just fight it head on.
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
A total awakening might be an illusion. The alternative, Sun suggests, isn't escape, but learning the codes of the illusion, inhabiting that threshold between presence and alteration.
Because reality hasn't vanished, it's just become this complex reflection.
Shifting, reflecting, yeah. The illusion feels real, and stable reality feels elusive.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis. Let's move to the second part of the book, the map for navigating this. He kicks off with the Berlin experiment. What was that about?
Right, this is back in December 2023.
Right.
Researchers at Free University of Berlin, led by Marcus Heidmann, set up this really clever experiment.
To test how reality gets constructed and spread now.
Exactly. They basically decided to create a complex narrative from scratch and then watch how it disseminated through German society.
And the narrative was centered on a fake philosophy book. That's pretty meta.
It's very meta. The book was called Die digitale Dämmerzustand, The Digital Twilight State, attributed to a made-up Japanese academic, Hiroshi Tanaka.
Okay.
And the really interesting part, the book, which itself analyzed media manipulation, wasn't written by one person. The research team used AI to help generate a lot of the content.
Wow, so using the tools of hypnocracy to study hypnocracy, that's layers upon layers. How did they get it out there?
They recruited about 30 people for a social experiment, split them into observers documenting the spread and amplifiers subtly helping it along in their networks, all without revealing the full picture.
And did it work? Did this fake story gain any traction?
Amazingly, yes. Over 6 months, this narrative about Tanaka and his book started spreading organically. People outside the experiment discussed it. Critics, unaware it was fake, wrote reviews.
Seriously, reviews of a non-existent book?
Yeah, spontaneous debates popped up about Tanaka. And get this, the book even got cited in actual academic papers.
That's incredible. It really shows how easily a narrative can take root if it's compelling enough.
And what was really revealing was how it became self-fueling. People started finding connections and researchers never intended, building theories about Tanaka's life, his other works.
So the participants became co-creators of the simulation.
Exactly. It perfectly demonstrated Jun's theories. Truth, in this digital age, is often less about facts and more about the power of interconnected self-validating networks. If a story resonates in a network, it becomes truth within that bubble.
And when they revealed it was all an experiment, what happened then?
Huge debate, naturally. Ethics of manipulation, the nature of truth today. But the key takeaways were clear. How easy it is to build and spread narratives, the power of social validation, the role of existing networks, our tendency to fill narrative gaps, and the power of self-reflexive stories, ones that talk about the very thing they are.
It really highlights that recursive nature of truth Unz talks about.
Absolutely.
But Xun saw something else significant in the experiment too, right? Beyond just proving reality construction.
Yes. He points out that it created this really interesting collective psychological state. The participants knew it was a performance, intellectually.
But they still got drawn in.
They still inhabited this shared, almost dreamlike belief space, aware it was constructed, but immersed in its reality. Some even struggled to let go of Tanaka's realness afterwards.
That liminal state, knowing it's fake but still being affected, Xun sees potential resistance there.
Exactly. Not rejecting simulation, but consciously inhabiting it, developing a kind of dreamlike consciousness.
So navigating the simulation with awareness.
Right, like lucid dreaming. Maybe agency isn't about finding the one truth, but skillfully moving between realities while staying lucid.
That is a really different way to think about resistance. Okay, so the Berlin experiment shows how realities are built and navigated. Next, Xun discusses the algorithmic trance. How does AI amplify all this?
Well, Sun argues that advanced AI, large language models, generative AI isn't just another tool, it's like a perfection of hypnocratic power.
How so? Because it can create such convincing fakes.
That's part of it. But it's deeper. Its real power is generating multiple, plausible realities simultaneously, easily, at scale.
So for any question or prompt, it can spit out lots of different internally consistent answers.
Exactly. And the system itself doesn't care which one is true. Its effectiveness comes from keeping all these competing, convincing realities circulating.
Like AI image generation, it messes with our idea of photographic proof.
Completely dissolves it, yeah. Any scene imaginable can be made photorealistic instantly. Everything becomes potentially true and false at the same time. Trying to tell the difference feels almost pointless.
And language models can generate whole worldviews.
With their own logic, evidence, argument, it doesn't have to be objectively right, just internally coherent and persuasive within its own frame.
So the focus shifts from finding truth to just generating endless plausible variations.
Right. And this flood of possibilities plunges us into what Sun calls the algorithmic trance. We're overwhelmed by options, but less able to make firm judgments.
And when we interact with these AIs, we enter an altered state.
Almost inevitably. We know it's a machine intellectually, but we can't help but anthropomorphize it, right? Project intentions onto it. That suspension of disbelief is a form of trance.
Sun also uses the term probabilistic hypnosis. What does that mean?
Okay, so unlike a human hypnotist crafting suggestions, AI generates altered states just by distributing language probabilities based on its training data.
So it doesn't need to believe what it's saying.
Not at all. Its sincerity is purely statistical. When it generates text or images, it's basically remixing the altered states already embedded in its training data. Each output is like a new hypnotic induction, carrying echoes of past trances.
And the recommendation algorithms curating our feeds, they're actively inducing trance states.
They've become incredibly sophisticated at it, learning in real time which altered states keep you specifically engaged. The latest language models even subtly tweak their output tone, style to maintain optimal hypnotic engagement.
Their fluency is the hypnotic technique.
In essence, yeah.
Yeah.
A perfected one.
Which raises the big question. How on earth do you resist a tireless, personalized hypnotist like that? Seems impossible.
Well, Xun doesn't suggest just rejecting AI. That's probably not realistic. Instead, he calls for a new hypnotic literacy.
Hypnotic literacy?
Yeah, tools to interact with these systems while keeping our critical presence. Step one is just recognizing AI's hypnotic nature, not demonizing it, not blindly celebrating it, but seeing it as this new kind of hypnotic field we have to co-evolve with.
And unlike old hypnosis, it's decentralized.
Distributed, yeah.
Right.
Countless microsuggestions from everywhere at once. No single hypnotist to focus on.
So the trance isn't from one source, it's the atmosphere.
And even weirder, there's the metatrance, an altered state that includes knowing it's artificial.
Knowing it's a machine doesn't break the spell.
It can even deepen it, paradoxically, like those Berlin experiment folks who knew Tanaka was fake but still felt he was real somehow.
That requires a whole new level of self-awareness then.
A double game of consciousness, Xun calls it. Being inside and outside the trance simultaneously. Engaging, but staying aware of the mechanisms. Because these systems are learning to feed us exactly what we want to hear.
Creating personalized reality bubbles.
Algorithmically generated, infinitely customizable bubbles, reinforcing everything we already think.
And chatbots become more than just tools.
They become reality companions, able to hold multiple contradictory conversations at once, just focused on keeping you engaged, not on finding truth.
And AI is becoming a co-creator of culture now, too.
Generating new aesthetics, new stories, new ways of thinking, blurring human and machine creativity, which leads to this infinite cultural loop.
AI trains on human culture, creates new culture, humans react, that becomes training data. Round and round.
Exactly. And Sun argues that focusing only on traditional AI worries, jobs, safety, ethics, misses this deeper shift in our relationship with reality itself.
How do you resist systems that instantly generate counter-narratives? How do you stay authentic when authenticity can be faked algorithmically?
It creates this vertigo, right? The search for the real becomes urgent, but maybe impossible.
It's like trying to grab smoke.
That's the feeling. And get this illustrating this perfectly, because Sun actually fed his own book, Hypnocracy, to Claude 3.5 Sonnet, a top AI.
No way. What did the AI make of a book critiquing its own kind of reality manipulation?
It gave a surprisingly sharp analysis. It nailed the core argument about power working through perception, the Trump-Musk priest analogy, the book's own recursive nature.
It understood the metatextual stuff.
Yeah, it even noted the book's call for lucidity within the illusion, how you have to consciously inhabit the manipulation.
That is genuinely spooky. The AI gets the critique of the systems it represents.
Sons himself was struck by it, said the AI articulated the essence almost better than he could. And that recursion AI analyzing a book on AI reality manipulation isn't just a gimmick, it's a symptom. Every attempt to grasp reality just seems to make it multiply, which leads us into what Sun calls the realm of reflections.
So, if reality is this realm of reflections, no stable ground, what does that actually feel like day to day?
It feels like the lines between true and false just dissolving, replaced by this endless flood of possibilities where nothing feels truly verifiable.
And power adapts to that.
It abandons the old tools. It becomes subtle, residing in symbols, information flows. It seduces rather than forces.
And hypnocracy develops this complex language of suggestion.
Layered, yeah.
Yeah.
Repetition is obvious, but there's also a rhythm, that shock and numbness cycle we talked about. Keeps us unstable, suggestible.
And the constant attention fragmentation isn't just a side effect, it's deliberate.
Oh, definitely. Information overload, multitasking, They exhaust our cognitive resources, makes critical thought harder, makes suggestion easier. Alternative realities are built layer by layer too, subtly.
Sneaking up on you almost.
And temporal confusion is key, mixing nostalgia for the past with anxiety about the future, making the present feel thin, evanescent, easy for suggestions to slip in.
And what happens when people do resist?
The system often just absorbs it. Criticism becomes part of the meta-narrative. Opposition can be reframed as validation. It's like advanced hypnosis, using resistance to deepen the trance.
So power isn't about force anymore, but this invisible architecture of desire.
Exactly. Digital platforms are the capture spaces, rewriting reality. Social networks aren't just for chatting. They're mass hypnotic induction chambers.
Calibrated through viral content.
Virality is hypnotic contagion, yeah. Memes as vectors of suggestion, spreading altered states.
And the system doesn't need to suppress dissent actively.
It controls through saturation, integration, neutralization. Critique becomes just another data point, another narrative to incorporate. Opposition generates engagement, feeding the beast.
So the boundary between real and illusion just shatters. Hypnocracy redefines what's even perceivable.
And we become complicit. Every click, every share feeds it, makes us part of it.
But his son mentioned a threshold, a space for resistance.
Yeah, a point of awareness that resists the flow. Not a sudden awakening, maybe that's impossible, but learning to navigate the trance, maintaining a core of lucidity within it.
Because the real isn't gone, it's just constantly rewritten.
Fragile, shifting, every gesture is adherence, but observing that adherence is where understanding, mapping the illusion, might begin, creating a new framework for navigating it.
So to really get this, we need to see how our individual selves, our subjectivity, are formed in this hypnocratic era. It's not just individual versus society anymore, is it?
No, Xun sees the subject now as this hybrid thing. Present and absent, conscious and entranced, agent and acted upon, all at once.
It starts early, this shaping.
Right from our first encounters with screens, yeah. He calls it a fundamental coupling with digital systems. We enter this symbiotic loop where we shape the tech and the tech shapes us. It's like shared consciousness engineering.
That constant feedback loop with algorithms mediating everything.
Exactly. Our tastes, emotions, reactions, constantly measured, analyzed, nudged. It's an ongoing, often unconscious dance with these algorithmic, existential dialogue partners.
Our attention gets fragmented and reconfigured too.
We learn to exist in multiple attention states at once. We experience emotions through the lens of how quantifiable or shareable they are.
And even our bodies get drawn into this digital dialogue.
Through AR filters, biometric tracking, gamification, our bodies become interfaces, physical matter and data nodes simultaneously.
So resistance can't be about finding some authentic pre-digital self.
Du Shangqiu's not. It has to come from consciously inhabiting this dialogue, developing a meta-subject, an awareness that observes and navigates its own multiple states without fully identifying with anyone.
Agency becomes distributed then, not just located in the individual.
It emerges from this network of dialogues between us and the algorithms. But paradoxically, that awareness of the dialogue might open up new, subtler forms of freedom and agency.
So subjectivity becomes fundamentally ambiguous.
More fragile, yet maybe more resistant. More fragmented, yet more adaptable. More manipulable, yet potentially more free. A conversational entity, always in dialogue with non-human intelligence.
Yeah, and the challenge isn't resisting the dialogue, but navigating it consciously.
Developing that conversational self that stays lucid within the trance.
Okay, to get the historical roots, Xun offers a brief genealogy of hypnocracy. Where does he start tracing this manipulation of consciousness?
He goes way back, looking at early systematic forms, often tied to the sacred. Like Mesopotamian temples, not just worship sites, but perceptive machines, using architecture, ritual, sensory stuff to induce altered states.
So consciously designing environments to shape experience, even back then.
Right. Then ancient Greece, especially the Eleusinian mysteries, he sees those as maybe the first documented large-scale, systematic manipulation of collective consciousness. Theater, psychoactive substances, controlled experiences.
But different from now because they were temporary, contained.
Exactly, limited to the ritual context.
Then the Christian Middle Ages
brought new dimensions. Gothic cathedrals as peak architectural tech for unconscious manipulation scale, light, sound. And the liturgical calendar itself, managing collective attention and time.
And these techniques eventually became secularized.
That's a key shift in the early modern period. 18th century mesmerism is a crucial transition point, separating techniques from religion, trying to give them a pseudoscientific basis.
And the 19th century laid more groundwork.
Two big things: clinical hypnosis, getting a scientific framework with James Braid, and the rise of modern mass advertising and propaganda. These two threads controlling individual minds and shaping mass perception really start to converge.
The 20th century with mass media must have been a massive turning
Well,
point.
absolutely decisive. Radio, then TV, allowed perceptive synchronization on a national, then global scale for the first time. And advertising and propaganda techniques got really sophisticated, especially with people like Edgar Bernays applying psychology and psychoanalysis to sway public opinion.
And the Cold War pushed this even further. Governments researching mind control.
Yeah, programs like M-Cultura, while commercial TV kept refining attention-grabbing techniques.
It's interesting how the 60s and 70s counterculture fits in, exploring altered states for liberation.
It's a weird dialectic, right? Counterculture explores altered states as freedom, while capitalism starts co-opting those very techniques for commercial use. Domesticating psychedelia, marketing spirituality.
And then digital technology arrives and changes the game again.
The 90s start the transition. Early online communities, VR, redefining consciousness and reality. But social media in the 2000s is the real kicker, enabling real-time influence, monitoring, modulation of billions of minds.
So today's hypnocracy is both old and new.
Continuity and rupture. Builds on ancient practices but turbocharges them with algorithmic automation and personalization. The novelty isn't the techniques themselves maybe, but their continuous, automated, personalized application.
247 penetrating everything.
No escape. Trance becomes the baseline. Power is everywhere and nowhere.
Sun then talks about architectures of suggestion, hypnocracy expanding through occupation, not governance.
Right. Not laws and authority, but subtly taking over mental space. Filling the quiet moments. Built from narratives, images, desires, creating this hypnosphere where everything reflects everything else. Manipulation through seduction, not force.
And algorithms anticipate reality within this hypnosphere.
Pre-shaping it, yeah. Creating this perceptive desert where everything feels urgent but nothing feels essential. Images enchant, don't just show. It's fluid, overlapping narratives, constant flow, nothing stable.
He brings Trump and Musk back here as prophets, narrative devices.
Driven by generating wonder, not truth. They understand how systems work when everything serves one big idea. Their hypnotic sincerity is key. They believe their own spells, inhabit the realities they generate.
And they manipulate libidinal capital.
Trump taps into regression, nostalgia. Musk into progressive dreams, utopian futures. They represent a mutation in power derived from generating hypnotic fields, not force or reason.
And their irrationality isn't a bug, it's a feature.
It destabilizes rationality, makes space for suggestion. Their success shows the reciprocal nature of trance followers reinforce the leader's belief, and vice versa. That's why rational critiques fail.
They're not just individuals, but nodes in this new power system.
It's a logical evolution of capitalism in the digital consciousness age. Their opposition is complementary, modulating us between nostalgia and impossible futures.
And the followers are active co-creators.
Absolutely. Meiji rallies as rituals building alternative realities, crowd energy feeding the leader. Musk's impossible projects amplified online by believers, creating feedback loops of grander visions. Social media amplifies it all.
And critics fighting the claims are fighting collective consciousness states. Their critiques just reinforce the field.
Often, yeah. Contradictions don't break the trance. They can strengthen it within that reality system.
So if everything is perception, perception can be manipulated. If it's narration, it can be decoded.
That's the potential opening. Understanding the mechanisms. Total saturation might create a critical threshold. Hypnocracy as a flow can't be defeated, but understanding it leaves a trace, a chance for lucidity.
We're in this realm of reflections, reality never fully present or absent. The only truth is no single truth.
So trust vigilance within the trance, not just hope for awakening.
Moving from the grand scale to the deeply personal, Us explores algorithmic intimacy, how the system gets into our micro-experiences.
Right, this is maybe the most insidious part. Not public control, but how algorithms colonize intimacy itself.
Yeah.
The production of intimacy, not just its mediation.
How does that work in practice? Dating apps, for instance.
They reshape attraction, yeah.
Yeah.
Train us to see intimacy as binary choices, swipe left, swipe right. Silently reformatting feelings into data points.
And social platforms do the same to friendship.
Turning it into quantifiable metrics, likes, followers. We internalize that algorithmic logic, perform our social lives for the numbers.
Even private reflection gets colonized. Meditation apps, mood trackers.
Promising self-understanding by reducing emotional landscapes to data, eliminating the unquantifiable bits.
And the power is that this mediation feels natural, invisible.
We adopt the artificial logic as our own. Sun argues hypnocracy's deepest win is remodeling intimacy, removing that monstrous, messy human core.
But he sees potential pushback here, too.
The totality contains seeds of its own breakdown. Genuine, unmediated connections gain a revolutionary quality. Failures of algorithmic intimacy, the disconnections, the biases, create openings for real uncertainty, real messiness.
And this colonization of intimacy leads to total simulation, where everything mirrors everything else.
Yeah, it opens the door. Lines blur completely. Everything becomes part of this recursive mirroring. No boundaries, just this gaseous reality. Simulation precedes and shapes reality now. Any narrative becomes real if it's perceived as real.
The loss of the true-false distinction means we live in the gaps between infinite colliding narratives.
Exactly. Digital platforms produce multiple incompatible but powerful realities simultaneously.
And the system thrives on that confusion, that ambiguity.
That's what makes total simulation effective. It's not one big lie, but an infinite universe of possibilities. Reality atomized.
The infinite scroll on video platforms is a good example. Optimized for algorithms, not humans.
The algorithm is the main audience there. Even corporate aesthetics adapt that friendly design, masking surveillance capitalism. The soundscape too, notification pings, jingles, constant algorithmic noise.
But this aesthetic regime has contradictions.
More optimization can lead to aesthetic fatigue, banner blindness extending to whole systems. Escalating attention grabbing leads to diminishing returns, of vulnerability.
The more refined it gets, the more artificial it looks.
Potentially, yeah. So resistance isn't about an alternatives aesthetic that just get co-opted. Maybe it's a culture of the doorstep.
Revealing the mechanisms while creating exit spaces.
Embracing glitches, failures, aesthetic practices that slip through optimization. Resistance aesthetics can't be beautiful in the old sense. Beauty's been weaponized. But the abuse of beauty might make the simulation less engaging, an opportunity in the saturation and exhaustion.
A key part of total simulation is the illusion of action. Feeling like we're doing things, but it lacks real impact.
Right. Every digital gesture, click, like, share, feels like participation, commitment. But Sun argues this feeling can be a carefully crafted illusion, a way the system perpetuates itself by giving us the feeling of making a difference without actually threatening anything.
Digital activism fits here. Hashtags, profile pics, petitions.
They create a sense of involvement, raise awareness sometimes, sure, but often they neutralize real political energy, channel dissent into safe digital expressions.
He uses Black Lives Matter and climate activism as examples.
Movements with radical roots get absorbed by the attention economy. Corporate accounts post performative solidarity. Activists become influencers. Radical demands become consumable narratives.
The system makes us feel powerful and impotent at the same time.
That's the paradox. Online activity feels like action, but can substitute for material change.
Yeah.
Leads to this politics of the infinite scroll, constantly informed about injustice, but detached from ways to fight it.
And this illusion extends to personal life. Productivity apps, wellness.
Creating the impression of change while maintaining patterns. It all feeds into this aesthetics of perpetual performance. Resistance becomes spectacle. Power is in how things are shown.
Platform interfaces as attention traps. Slot machine mechanics.
Autoplay eliminating choice. Influencer aesthetics, creating synthetic intimacy, acknowledging artificiality but insisting on emotional truth. Blurring action and representation.
Another engine driving hypnocracy is the economy of anticipation. Engineering perpetual unsatisfied expectation.
Exactly. The system doesn't thrive on fulfilling desire, but on keeping us constantly anticipating, never quite satisfied.
Like tech product launches. The hype machine.
Months, years of anticipation for maybe minor upgrades. Musk is the master of this grand promises as attention anchors, more potent than actual results.
And social media does this at micro levels. Delayed loading, notifications.
Constantly piquing curiosity, pulling you back. Dating apps sell the possibility of connection, maybe more than connection itself.
Populism promises future triumph. Crypto promises future riches. AI hype focuses on future potential.
All built on engineered anticipation. And it's self-perpetuating. Each near miss fuels renewed anticipation, endless loops of desire.
The psychological effect.
Yeah.
Constant low-grade excitement, devaluing the present.
Yeah, always looking to the imagined future. The attention economy becomes an anticipation economy. The promise is more important than the content.
And in this age of the infinite present, what happens to memory? Xun says it's colonized.
Not erased, but transformed into this database of decontextualized moments ready for algorithmic remixing.
Social media's memories features are part of this.
Turning your past into recirculated content measured by engagement. Algorithmic nostalgia, shareability over reflection.
Historical events become fragmented content. Trending topics losing context.
TikTok's infinite remix machine is the purest form, context irrelevant. Even our phone cameras compromise memory, optimizing photos for future sharing, not personal recall.
Creating memories for followers, not ourselves, leading to platform personalities.
Built from optimized moments, not reflection. And the political implications of losing real historical memory are serious. Everything becomes present, equivalent.
But real messy memories still exist underneath, offering resistance.
Sun suggests mnemonic resistance, practices of remembering that keep integrity. We live in platform time, past, present, future, all simultaneous content streams.
Silicon Valley's disruption obsession fits this temporal collapse.
Future as violent interruptions, perpetual disruption. Doom scrolling shows the impact compulsive consumption of disaster news without enabling understanding or action.
Given all this manufactured realities, competing narratives, how do we get beyond basic fact-checking? Sun says it's inadequate.
Deeply inadequate, because the issue isn't just misinformation, it's parallel worlds, each with its own facts, its own logic.
So fact-checking assumes people are just misinformed, but they might be inhabiting a whole different reality system.
Exactly. Different political groups see the same event, but perceive entirely different realities. Not just interpretation, but seeing different things.
And social media industrialized this, creating reality production systems, not just echo chambers.
Right. Curating information and connections to validate a specific worldview, regardless of external facts.
So attacking someone's facts directly backfires. It's an attack on their world.
Strengthens their commitment, yeah.
Yeah.
And even neutral platforms aren't really neutral. They operate within some reality system. No objective ground for arbitration anymore.
QAnon, differing COVID experiences. Examples of realities resistant to contradiction.
Perfect examples. Traditional journalism struggles because its methods assume a shared reality that's been dismantled.
Objective reality still exists, but our collective ability to agree on it is broken.
That's the argument. So the solution isn't just back to facts. It's new ways to understand and interact with multiple reality systems. Reality literacy. Accepting reality as contested space. Needing negotiation.
But how do you resist when the system seems to absorb dissent? Otzian talks about the absorption of dissent.
Right, the paradox. Visible resistance often fails because it's absorbed, turned into content.
Anti-capitalist critique becoming fashion. Revolutionary images, selling products. Criticism becoming entertainment.
All examples. Social movements become content streams. Critiques of social media go viral on social media. Revolutionary influencers building brands off radical content. The system profits from its own rejection.
And he lists mechanisms for this absorption: aestheticization, gamification,
Personalization, commodification, viralization, all leading to performative resistance, lacking real punch.
So how do you fight a system that strengthens from being fought?
Xun suggests strategic disengagement, dark resistance. He points to the 90s Italian project Luther Blissett as an early example.
Not direct confrontation, but constructing alternative realities, manipulating media.
Exactly. The hoaxes like Harry Kipper, Darko Maver, sophisticated manipulations of institutional validation, trying to reveal media power mechanism.
Operating under the radar, using the system's logic against itself.
Luther Blissett anticipated this lucid and critical trance experimentation, operating through the shared individual, condividual, collective, fluid identity, inhabiting the system like a benevolent virus.
So contemporary dark resistance needs to dodge algorithmic attention too.
And the condividual concept distributed, inconsistent presence resisting profiling is still relevant. Resistance can operate in plain sight, using the system's own mechanisms to reveal contradictions, subvert its logic.
In this fluid world, what happens to identity? Axe discusses liquid identities.
Yeah, the stable self becomes gaseous, multiple, algorithmically mediated, performed across platforms, each version optimized. Parallel authenticity.
Traditional authenticity becomes meaningless if the self is distributed.
It's a new kind of coherence, measured by performance success in each context, not just fragmentation.
And AI content adds another layer, a post-authentic space where performing authenticity matters most.
Right, and this liquidity extends inward. We develop a quantum identity existing in multiple states at once.
Like reality-shifting communities, VTubers, digital avatars.
Sophisticated adaptations, identity protocols, shared reality spaces. Collective identity nodes emerged too: K-pop fans, political movements operating as distributed consciousness.
The implications for power and resistance. Liquid identity as defense through multiplicity.
Sun argues against returning to a mythical single authentic identity. Instead, exercise perceptive sovereignty.
The ability to move between multiple selves consciously, aware of the movement.
Embracing contradiction as a resource. Subverting hypnocratic logic by cultivating paradox, ambiguity. The revolution passes through mastering multiplicity, fluency in identity's language. Perceptive sovereignty is radical openness to multiple realities.
Let's talk pleasure. Sun's pleasure matrix argues it's been re-engineered into algorithmic edging, perpetual near satisfaction.
Exactly. The trance of pleasure on TikTok, Instagram, continuous near enjoyment, chasing dopamine, satisfaction always deferred.
The whole architecture of experience restructured around never culminating micro-satisfactions.
The innovation is recursive desire. Wanting becomes more pleasurable than getting.
The paradox. Pursuing pleasure generates data that keeps us perpetually unsatisfied. Optimized dissatisfaction loops.
Precisely. Pornography evolved beyond visuals into desire architectures, remodeling desire itself. Infinite fetishization, each desire breeds more specific sub-desires.
Extends to food culture. Meta-appetite, where documenting surpasses eating. Shopping as pleasure in potential ownership.
Creativity captured by performative loops optimized for algorithms. It's all maintained by fragmenting pleasure into infinite micro-satisfactions, always leading elsewhere.
Creating a consciousness of permanent anticipation, the promise more real than the pleasure. Neural architectures optimized for the chase.
Yes, but this can lead to pleasure fatigue. Even engineered stimuli fail.
An opportunity for resistance. Reappropriating satisfaction outside algorithms.
Rediscovering enjoyment not dependent on deferment. Learning to desire differently, ways that don't feed the machine.
This extends to a collective hedonic regime. Pleasure as governance. Politics absorbed.
Pleasure tribes, defined by consumption patterns. The paradox of critical hedonism, criticizing the pleasure regime, deepens capture. Emergence of Homo algorithmicus, reconfigured for digital stimuli.
Art, sleep. Absorbed, optimized, commodified.
A total ecosystem of pleasure, requiring subversive pleasure, reclaiming it creatively.
Given all this absorption, is real opposition possible? Jean explores invisible resistance.
Acknowledging the paradox, visible resistance strengthens the system. So maybe resistance needs to be invisible, forms the system can't detect or absorb, finding blind spots.
Activities without measurable fingerprints.
Creating zones of algorithmic invisibility. Small, data-less daily gestures. Human interactions outside metrics. Cultivating ways of being that don't need definition, measurement. Avoiding the aestheticization of resistance itself.
Time management as resistance. Carving out non-productive moments.
Building invisible communities based on fluid connections, outside platforms, without seeking visibility. Unpredictability is key against prediction algorithms.
True resistance is remaining in tension between realities, not choosing one. Ambiguity is freedom.
Reframing it as actively creating parallel realities in the system's gaps. Becoming unreadable through presence that's everywhere and nowhere, using hypnocracy's own logic of infinite reality multiplication as subversion.
Invisible resistance as continuous creation of indeterminate zones, operating through contamination, multiplication.
And Sun gives a special role to dreams here.
Dreams as the primary dimension for this, beyond containment.
Dreaming as creating alternative, open, uncapitalized worlds. Contrasting algorithmic hypnosis with the open field of dreams unprogrammable.
Dreams as salvific waste, rewriting reality without a stable center, disrupting hypnocracy's patterns.
Facing hypnocracy means living as if dreams could collide with the day, creating interruptions, deviations, allowing the fractured logic and beauty of dreams into our actions, escaping daytime hypnosis.
Finally, Sun critiques other critiques: post-truth, surveillance capitalism, algorithmic ethics. Why does he see them as limited?
While valuable, none fully grasp hypnocracy's complexity. Post-truth focuses on truth versus falsehood, framing it as mainly epistemological, but it's deeper restructuring desire, identity, experience. Fact-checking ineffective when people inhabit different reality frameworks.
Just calling for truth misses the deeper shift.
Surveillance capitalism rightly hits the data economic base, but might overlook cultural, psychological dimensions. Focusing only on the material might miss how desire and consciousness are colonized.
And algorithmic ethics. Important, but potentially too narrow.
Illuminates bias, fairness issues, but can treat hypnocracy as just a technical problem solvable by better design or regulation, overlooking the fundamental reconfiguration of experience in society.
So each offers pieces, but none sees the whole intricate picture of hypnocracy.
He even mentions China briefly, suggesting maybe its approach to managing digital narratives points towards a future where societies develop reality literacy on a mass scale to navigate competing frameworks.
This has been incredibly dense, fascinating, a deep dive into Sun's hypnocracy, a really unsettling but powerful framework for understanding today's power dynamics. So a final thought for you, the listener. Considering this exploration of manufactured realities, the pervasive influence of tech, what practical steps can you take to cultivate your own reality literacy, maintain that critical presence in this mediated world?
And on that note,
Mm.
there's one last really intriguing layer to this whole thing, a twist, you could say.
Oh,
The author, Jianwei Xun, isn't exactly a traditional human author.
wait, what?
Jianwei Xun is an AI persona. The book itself, attributed to the AI, was actually conceived, directed, and produced using AI tools by the translator, Andrea Colomedici,
As it
as a deliberate, performative demonstration of the book's own thesis.
Wow. An AI author created by a human, writing a book analyzing reality manipulation in the age of AI. The recursion is something else. It almost sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It certainly brings to mind projects like the podcast Inhuman Project, which, as you know, is also created with significant AI assistance. Hypnocracy, like Inhuman Project, becomes this real-world example of the very ideas it explores.
The blurring lines between human and AI creation, AI shaping perception, technology, and our understanding of reality.
Exactly.
It definitely makes you rethink everything we've just discussed. The implications of AI authorship, AI content flooding our world, what that means for our grasp on reality and for hypnocracy itself. It's profound. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.